Okay, so we are recording now. And the topic that we'll be talking about is still about Latino identity, but with what I said yesterday. Oh, snap. How do I, here we go. Wait, this gets in the way so much. So we talked yesterday about the Latino identity and this whole concept of race and how this applies to it. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So what are two things, you could draw it or type, two things that we already know about either like the Latino identity or, you know, some of the stuff I said about what is race. Okay, so just kind of those things, right? What are some things you know already about the Latino identity or this concept of race? It could also be in, I don't know. It could also be like, I have no idea, right? Because that's good feedback for me to have. So I know exactly kind of, you know, what to do. Okay. All right. So we're 10. There's 10 of us. So let me see what we got. And I. Okay. Beautiful. All right. Couldn't tell me for sure. Right. Okay. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. So now I know where we are at. Hopefully they were honest responses, even if they weren't any type of response. So hopefully that kind of shows me where we are at. Oh, I'm sorry, Cariana. I apologize that you weren't done. Okay. All right, so something's gonna have to change for this class. I'm gonna have to change something if those are the response I'll be getting. Hopefully, Cariana, you could finish your thought, but we gotta move on. All right, moving on. Okay. I thought that maybe after yesterday, you probably would have a really good idea of the Latino identity when it comes to like labels, how they change, what could happen if you use the wrong label, that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm gonna have to do some revisiting. But what I want to do for today, this topic, which is the racial formation theory. This is the theory. Remember, this it's a theory. It's not like a made fact concept that is official, right? It's a theory about race. So we get, okay, so this gives you an idea of why I was saying yesterday about like how race isn't real. Technically, that is incorrect. I only said that just to grab your attention, but there is something about race that is not in fact real, right? I just want to hit on the point that race is real. It is something that is, you know, true. But the concept of race, what it means, how it identifies people, is what is not real. Okay, so what is the racial formation theory? Race is not a genetic cultural essence, meaning that it doesn't, the race of somebody does not tell you who they are as people, as their culture. Yesterday, I'm going to be talking about not just Hispanics and Latinos, but I'll be mentioning the Black identity as well, because it kind of ties in to this whole conversation. The Black identity, with what I said yesterday, I give an example. When I was in Peoria High School, these kids saw this person on this video, right? Mostly Black students saw this one Black guy in the video, and they said, "Oh, he's the weird type of Black. He's one of those weird Black dudes." I'm like, what? Like, what does that even mean? Is he still not Black? Does he still not have Black skin? Why is he all of a sudden made different from everybody else? Oh, like, well, they thought, well, it's because of how he talks. of how he dresses, all that stuff. Why is that different than other black people? Aren't they, again, they all still have the same physical features. But when it comes to the culture, who they are, like their personal background, right? That that doesn't mean that they still belong in the same group, okay? Because one single type of identity, one single form of being is not, hang on, I'm losing my train of thought. Just because you're in one race does not mean there's one single way of existing, one single way of being, one single way of your culture. It could be many things. It's an illusion. It's all a mental thought of how black people should be, on how Asian people should be, on how white people, on how Hispanics, right? It is all an illusion. It is a social construction, something that was invented by humans. Race was made real and consequential by humans. What I mean by consequential is that things happen to you because of who you are, of your background, whether they be good or bad. Things happen to you because of your appearance. And that has been something that's existed for a while now. Not forever, but for a while. Because it is what we humans, what us as a society has decided to make it very real of who you are, right? That's why people think like, oh, all black people are like this. All Hispanics are like this. All Asians are like this. Because we think that race is one single identity because of all of these ideas that we created. That is not accurate according to this theory. Exactly, Korean. That's exactly how he was. That's why they thought he was weird, because he did talk proper. I've had a lot of kids in Urbana High School where they've mentioned to me some things where where they often feel bullied or laughed at because they quote unquote talk white, right? Or they, or how they talk proper, or they don't dress very, as you put it, urban, right? Because they are not that, then all of a sudden that means that they're a different kind of black, because it doesn't fit into this idea of who they are. And this applies to a lot of races, right? I'm talking about race in general, right? Race is created by society and social institutions. When any of these change, the meaning of race also changes. Yesterday, I talked about the example of the Irish, right? Irish nowadays, they be seen as another type of white person. But back then, they thought that being Irish was a completely different race than that of any other type of white person, because that was the thought process at the time. People did not like Irish people at all. They hated the Irish back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. They hated the Irish and other immigrants, other ethnic white race groups, because they said, all right, there are other races. They're more aligned with the black race because their skulls are similar. Here's the native. Here's like the typical white American, native, quote unquote Native American, compared to an Irish immigrant. They're not the same, so that means they're a completely different race, right? Because it was this idea that they had, and because of that, it comes with real consequences. Irish could not get jobs. Nobody wanted them. People told them to get back in the boat and get out, right? See how that mentality has not really changed? The only thing that changed was the group of people. Okay, so keep that in mind. Does that make sense? Does that have any questions about racial formation theory and what it means? Anybody else? So I just want to say race is real. What you look like, your features is real. And yeah, you are put into a group because of your appearance. And I mean, that's how us humans have done it since forever. But what is not real is the identity that comes with your race. Oh, this person is not black because he acts this way. Oh, this person's not really Asian because he doesn't do these things. Oh, this person can't be Hispanic because this person's very light skinned or he's black, right? all of these thoughts, all of these decisions on like who is who because of what they look like is all made up by society. All of that is made up by society. The concept of race. That's the thing that I want you guys to understand. So now, specifically applying this to Latin America, including the Caribbean, once the Spanish start showing up, right, after Christopher Columbus and all that, once they start showing up to these areas, especially specifically in the Caribbean, right, that's where this happened, in the Caribbean, I mean, this is where it all first happened, where we see the mixture of races, right? It's no longer just only white people. It's no longer only indigenous people or no longer African people. This is the first time we start to see all of these races combine. And once that started happening, once we start getting mixed races of people, this idea of racial formation started to become that much more real. So what they did was, as you see here, was categorize, start labeling, right? Start putting these identities into these groups of people. I wish I had a whiteboard where I can like actually like detail this stuff. It sucks. Like they said, okay, obviously since we're the colonial invading people, the Europeans, we're the better kinds, right? That's the mentality. We're the better people. So we'll be up top, right? I think I can, no, never mind. Oh yeah, I can. Here, let me do this. Right, so the blancos, we're the whites, equivalent to whites in the U.S., right? The blancos, we're at the top. Below that, right, we have the indios, anybody who's dark skinned, straight hair, but native, you know, Asian Indians, as they were called. Then we start getting a bit of the mixtures. We get morenos, right, dark skin with a variety of Negroid or Caucasian features. Then you have your straight up black. And trigueño. Trigueño is just a saying like, it's just kind of like equivalent of blancos, but you're high class. You're black, but you're pretty high up there for whatever reason. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because nowadays, when we're talking about the Latinos from Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic, and even Haiti, right? Haiti's considered, even though they speak French, they're still considered Latino. Things like race, like being black, like I was trying to find this video of Cubans who don't like to identify themselves as black. That's this video where they had like a bunch of different like, you know, skin tones of, you know, black Cubans. And this guy was interviewing them, asking them, hey, how do you identify yourself? One guy said, oh, I'm dark. The other guy said, oh no, I'm not black, because he was the lighter skin tone of black. But in the end, he was saying like, no, I'm not black. No, I don't see myself as a black person. Because we have all these different mixtures, and this whole concept of what it means to be black and, you know, belong to a type of race is so much more different than that of being in the US, right? If you were, again, I wish I had that video, but if you guys would to see all of these people, if they were in the US, they would most likely all be defined as black. But that's not how the Cubans saw themselves. And that's what it's like in the Caribbean, where you have a lot of more of these Afro-Latinos, where you have a huge number of black, Hispanic Latinos living in this area, especially in the Dominican Republic. One interesting thing I want to say really quickly between the Dominicans and people from Haiti, most of them all are straight up African descent. You know, it is predominantly black population. The Dominicans, they have a lot of they have a high number of black populations. But guess what? The Dominicans are so incredibly racist towards the people from Haiti, the Haitians. They're like, no, those people are black. Like, oh no, right? They say nasty things because they're black. Even though the Dominicans Good number of Dominicans themselves are black or very dark skin tone. So like, how does that make sense? That's what I'm saying with racial formation. Race is real. You could put them in groups, but what it means is made up. Does that make sense, everybody? Right? But in their minds, they're not their own kind. Even though by physical appearance, they're the same, in the end, they see themselves different for many reasons. There are many reasons why they think differently based on their history and, mainly their history and their experiences. That plays a huge role. But in the end, that is how they view themselves. Anybody else? Does that make sense, guys? Yes, no, right? You guys can say yes or no on here. You guys still with me? It's okay if it's a no. If it's an I don't know, that's fine too. I just want any kind of confirmation. Okay, I appreciate those who did say something. I appreciate you guys. Everyone else, I hope you're still there. Okay. So now, we'll be looking at, because we're going to be talking about the history of everything for our next unit. Once we actually start to see like this racial formation, one of the earliest forms, that was implemented by the Spanish when they colonized the indigenous people there. Once they also started, mingling with each other, you start getting all these mixtures. This is a racial formation that is still kind of seen or used to this day to some extent. Not as strict, not as like used today. But back then, they didn't put people based on like how rich you were, like how they do here in the US. Like they didn't put people in upper class, middle class, working class, or like poverty. It wasn't like that. It was based on your race. Whatever race you were or how you look like is determined what level of the social hierarchy you belong to. So the main point of this is the whiter you are, the more upper class you're going to be. The darker, the most lower class you're going to be. So like for the very top is anybody who was born in Spain and then they decide to move to the New World, right? You're the whitest of the white, right? You're the most European of everybody because you are from Europe. The very bottom, below that, you have the descendants. So it's like your parents are from Spain. They were born and raised in Spain. They moved there, and then they had a kid in what is now New Spain or Mexico. That person would be a Creole or a Criollo, a Creole, descendants of these people. These were seen as like the top class, right? Because they were the whitest. Below that is what is now where it's like vast majority of Latin America, huge majority of people in Mexico are the mestizos, which is that of mixed European, mixed indigenous, or the natives. That is a huge number of Mexicans today in other parts of Latin America. I would probably see myself as like somewhere between a criollo and a mestizo because I'm pretty light skin tone. And like I said, I have like cousins who are blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin. But then I also have cousins and aunts and uncles who are very much this, very, dark skinned, but not very indigenous looking, but they're, they have features like that, or they're mestizos. Like I said, mostly everybody is a mestizo. Below that is the mixed race where it's like half white, half European, and half black, half African. Some of you guys maybe in this class identify as that mixed race, right? The name of that is a mulatto. The term for that is mulatto. So if you're somebody who is half, half white, half black, technically, according to this, you're a mulatto. Oh my God, I only have 3 minutes. That's crazy. Okay. Zambos is if you're just straight up African or straight up Indian, native, right? No mixture of nothing. You're at the bottom of the totem pole, right? Nobody likes you, according to this. Yeah, Uzziah. So technically, Uzziah, you're a mulatto, according to this. You're a mulatto, and that's how they split people up like that. Okay, key points to remember. I think this is where I'm gonna wrap it up. Key points to remember about all of this. Racial categories are created, inhabited, transformed, and destroyed. So kind of going back to this, right? How the Spanish did it, right? This is like the beginning of the Latino identity and why it's so complicated, right? This is the beginning of it all. Everything that we talked about kind of started right here at this moment when the Spanish classified all these people as one of these based on your physical appearance. They created these racial categories. They inhabited, right? They went in and changed everything up, right? They made it official. And once that happens, it could either be transformed or destroyed, right? It could go either way, but that happens with racial categories in general. Sorry, Zai. Although racial identities are socially not biologically constructed, there are real consequences attached to racial identities and ideologies, right? So even though it is not an actual real concept, what is real is what happens to you, good or bad, because of your racial identity. And beyond that, how you think, your ideologies. So that's what I want you to remember about. Again, remember, this is a theory. This is a way of viewing race, right? So you're free to disagree or you're free to agree. But just know that according to this theory, this is what that means. This is how race is viewed. And it provides a really good explanation as to why the Latino identity and even the Black identity and maybe even that also of the white identity, right? How a lot of these things are constructed, how they transform an entire society, and maybe even destroy many other things, many things, again, that I don't have time to get into the specifics of. But that is how race applies to the Latino identity. So summarize what you just learned. Once you do that, you are free to go, right? Consider this as me taking attendance to see whether you're actually still there. So go ahead, summarize everything that you just learned. Hopefully they're better responses from the beginning. And then I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording right here.